Okay, I want now to talk about how to target promotions successfully. And I assume that translates a target, a bullseye, and how to segment or differentiate, make differences between one audience and another. Okay? Because the commercial world, excuse me, does this all the time. If you launch a new chocolate bar, you must analyse the market and decide which bit your chocolate bar is aimed at. So let's take chocolate for predominantly, because advertising is quite stereotypical, men, will be about being hunky, big value chocolate bar for money. You know, it will keep you filled up between meals. The famous one in England was the Yorkie bar, and we had a giant truck, and it was all male truck drivers eating big chocolate bars. Yep. You know, that's a crude, but you can see where it's going. Whereas chocolate for women, ooh, no suggestion of calories whatsoever. Can we keep it very light and pretend it's not going to make us fat at all? Okay? That is a very, very different approach. Chocolate is often marketed, sometimes quite explicitly, as a sex substitute as well. So very, very different feel. Chocolate for children, probably fun and bright colours, very different again. Very simple gender and age differences about the chocolate bar. Then you will have the choice between value and luxury. Is this a big value chocolate bar that gives you lots for your money and is fairly basic? Or is it a very, very luxurious chocolate bar? You get a tiny little bit, but it's so wonderful. And you choose where on those things you pitch it. And if there's a gap in the market, you get rich. And if there isn't, your product fails. And most products fail, if you look at any of the statistics on this. But the thinking is always, which market am I after? Take cars, another one, okay? Cars. You know, are you looking for a family car? Are you looking for a sports car, a cool car? Are you looking for a car that will fit 2 dogs in the back? And car salesmen, women, know these things. And actually, if you read Paco Underhill, it is fascinating, even in America. Guess who makes the decision about which family car is bought? The woman. Nearly always, it's the woman. And what he talked about was the way the entire sales process was geared up for men. Bonkers. If they just talked to the women more, you know, how important is it to be green? That varies for different people. And the same car will be bought for different reasons by different people. That's all I'm saying, okay? It's a basic concept of marketing. When it comes to the public sector, us, libraries, we have a huge problem with that. Because we're not for these people, or these people, or these people. We're for everybody. We're for everybody that pays their taxes, and for all those who can't afford to pay any taxes as well. That's our purpose in existence. So we are for everybody. It's a great ideal, and it's wonderful to be that. The only problem is that when you come then to present that offer to anybody, what you present is very bland and very, you know, this is for everybody, it says. And nobody identifies with it. They all walk past, everybody's somebody else, it's not me. Okay? So things which are for everybody don't work as well as things which are targeted. But I don't want libraries to turn into commercial operators. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about how this concept of segmenting audiences, you can use it creatively. Okay? Perhaps before I do that, another example, taking it away from libraries, would help. As I'm sure this has happened in Sweden too. We have municipal swimming pools. Yeah? When I was a girl, they were open all day, every day, from early in the morning, 6 o'clock, till 10 o'clock at night, for undifferentiated use. Anybody could go. Unless there was a class happening, a lesson, anybody could go anytime. Okay? Now, the municipal swimming pool will have a lot of times for special things. Okay? And it's worth looking what some of those special things are. They're not just lessons to swim. They're sessions for instance, elderly swimmers, very elderly people. There are sessions for Muslim women. There are sessions for pregnant women. There are sessions for mothers with tiny young babies. Because there is a conflict of need here. If I'm a speed swimmer keeping fit, I want to go up, down, up, down. I do not want the kids with the fun inflatables in my way, so I have to turn around halfway down, you know. If I'm in there pregnant, I don't want to get kicked. You know, when I was a girl, it was rare to see pregnant women, particularly heavily pregnant women, in the swimming baths. I don't know whether that was, you're all more liberated here. I hope that you had it a bit sooner than us. But what happens now is not only is it differentiated, but I think it's widened the use. So it's no longer, we have sessions, for instance, for disabled swimmers. Now, somebody disabled can go at any time, of course they can. But sometimes they feel more comfortable going at a time where there are other people with disabilities. And you're not going to be stared at all the time, you know. So these are, it actually has widened the use to separate it out in that way. I think it's only happened because the private sector did it first and the public sector had to follow after. And I once gave that example in a session like this, conference, it was a bit bigger, and turned out there was a guy who managed swimming pools in the audience. He was actually responsible for the municipal swimming pools. And he said, it's very simple, swimming pools, actually, if you turn the temperature up 2 degrees, you get a load more women. Really interesting. And you could control the gender balance in the pool with the thermostat. Okay. So we like to think that we don't control anything, that we don't have a thermostat in libraries, we're open for everybody. But actually we're more comfortable with some than others. And what we present is more comfortable with some than others. For instance, very many library environments are very female because the staff are female, the most visible borrowers are female. So, for instance, I see constantly displays. This is one I've had a go at in Norway, so I will have a go at it in Sweden as well. We put cloths over the tables. Always, always, always. We're going to make a little table display. The first thing we do, oh, a nice cloth. Yes? Now, it's sometimes because the table isn't that beautiful, I know, but as soon as you put the cloth on, you make it less masculine. You have feminized that environment, okay? And you make it look, you know, even if you then put very male books on there, you've just changed. It's much harder for a guy to go up. Most guys, stereotyping a bit here. Gay guys, completely different. No, they would have a much better cloth. They would make it look so much smarter. Recruit all the gay guys you can. They're really, really valuable. But you see what I'm getting at? We don't think that we're giving off those signals, but we are, okay? And how do we avoid missing everybody by saying we're for everybody, okay? You can differentiate your audience, segment it in different ways. Now, the traditional ways for the commercial world are money. That's the major one. Income. Are you rich or are you poor? Somewhere along the middle. Which supermarket do you shop at? Defined by price for many. I don't want a library that does that. The whole point of a library is that it's a crossover for people with different income. Another very classic one, education. How educated are you? Oh, you've got a degree, you can do this. You haven't, you can't do that. And the whole world separates out. And again, the library's a fantastic place for self-education. So I don't want to say degrees this way, 18-year-old exams this way, no exams at all over there. You know, that's not the library way. But we do need to separate a little. So let's look at some of the things we can do. Hold on. Thank you very much. Okay. So here's some of the ways that we've done it very successfully. You can separate by age group and look at that. You need to be careful about the boundaries and don't make it fixed. Anything you do with children, if you're aiming at 11-year-olds, you want to make it look like it's for 13-year-olds. If you make it look like 11-year-olds, the 9-year-olds will take it. Children are always aspirational. Okay. But here's another one. We use this a lot. The length of time you're spending in the library. That's where the quick choice idea came from. Have you got just 1 minute, or are you going to be here 30 minutes? They're very different experiences. When I first started in library design, everybody put their seats really near the entrance. And I said, but this is for the people in a hurry. If I'm in a hurry, I don't need to sit down. I actually would like the seats a bit further in, somewhere a bit more cosy, a bit more intimate, where I'm going to stay a bit longer. If you have a cafe, if it's right at the front, it will be a quick cafe. If it's further in, it might be a slower cafe. There's choices about that. Okay. You can also look at how people choose. How do they behave in the space? What sort of reader are they? Do they know what they're looking for or not? And we can also look at things which happen inside the library and things which happen outside the library, which in English we call outreach. And you need to do very different things. Sometimes the library takes its library offer outside the library and plonks it in there as if it will work the same, and it won't. So I already showed you very quickly age groups, thinking about different age groups, and imagery, language should follow after. That signals. Okay, here's a much older audience. This is another promotion we did across Scotland, and it was the anniversary of the end of the Second World War. And we wanted something which would speak to that generation. And we called it The War in Words, and we separated into home front and battlefront. So the people who went to the battlefront and the people who have very big memories of what the home front was like. And one of the key things that we made, this is modelled exactly on the ration book that everybody had in Scotland at this point. I'm sure you have similar things, yeah? This piece of print would mean nothing to somebody under 50, okay? But to somebody of that target age group, it's very emotional. And just the lettering, the shape, the size, speaks instantly. You know, it was a very important point in people's lives, the war. It often was the most intense experience, and they've never forgotten it. We use it a lot in reminiscence therapy in the UK as well, tapping into that. So here we've reproduced the ration book, and it looks like the ration book, but it isn't actually the ration book at all. It's all invented, but made to look like. So it's a ration of reading, Scottish libraries commemorating the end of World War II. And you could borrow books and films about the war, you could use the internet to find out things, but also, this is the inside of this little card. We divided it up. On the real one, meat, eggs, butter. On our one, we suggested books. Rare or well done under the meat. Whatever your taste, you'll find something here. Eggs, crack the shell, and there's a treat inside. Butter, cheese, margarine, great fillers with their own distinctive flavour. Spread it about. And the books are a mix of books from the period, writers from that period, and other books about war, both later and at the time. And we used this with people who couldn't get to the library, where others were choosing for them. And they could tick more like this or had enough. So then you could bring it back to the library and say which ones you might actually want. Bacon with saltiness, sugar, indulgent and Moorish. So we've taken something which has a particular feel, and then we've adapted it to quite a modern purpose. We also didn't want to just have nostalgia, so there are books which are current books in there as well. But we're using the connector, the motivator, is to speak to that being recognisable. Okay. But somebody younger wouldn't recognise it at all, walk straight past it. Okay. So you probably need a series of different promotions to reach different audiences. Instead of doing everybody all at once, do one at a time. But then change who it's for. Okay. But this is black and white, you know, but it was so powerful, really worked. Here's another one. Nearly all our ideas come from training sessions like this. How do you involve staff was the question. Involve them in this kind of planning session as well. All of these promotions were devised with librarians in training sessions like this. So this one actually came from a group I was working with, which had, as is usual in libraries, more women than men, but it had two men who were both, one was, I don't know, about 48, the other was about 52, and they both said, what we get told when we're working is that you don't have enough books for men, and you don't know which ones to get. You're okay for the very old men, you know, the westerns and the, you know, the really old-fashioned stuff, and then there was a bit of younger stuff coming up that they were, but the people in the middle, you don't seem to have anything for us, and you don't quite know what we read, and you think we're all 80, and we're not, we're 50. And we don't actually read what you think 80-year-olds read. It was really a good discussion, and it came from two librarians, both male. So we said, right, there's one of them, no, this is actually a slightly older guy who was working on the mobile van at the time. So we said, okay, we'll make a promotion which is specifically for that. And we will target it, not just at the men, but at the women who come to the library to borrow the books for the men. Because quite often that's what happens in still very traditional rural environments. The van turns up and the woman gets on the van because she's the one at home when the van is there. And she then has to take the books back, and he says, I don't want that. I've read that already. Oh, God, I hate that, you know. And she gets it wrong. That was the other thing we were picking up a lot. So we created this promotion, which was aimed at men 45 to 65, particularly if they couldn't get to the library. And we ran it in small rural libraries and on the mobiles across the East Midlands, one particular region. And the design is mail order, which is another good play on words in English. He's not a pensioner, he's not very old, but he is quite formal. The tie was deliberately chosen. You know, it's not a young man's tie. If you read the fashion signals, that's not 20. And inside, again, we had particular books. And you could say, having looked at the book, you took this home, which is just one big fold-out thing, you could tick yes, no, or maybe. And then you brought it back to the library, and you got your yeses if they were there, and if they weren't there, you could take some maybes instead. So, again, with some nice bits of writing about the books. Learning to write about books is a technique which I think, again, is something we teach a lot, because so much writing about books is boring. And librarians do tend to just have the plot summary. How to kill a book dead. You know, you need language which is going to hook people in. So you can see the look of this is quite, it's modern, but it's not young. If you compare that with the Give Me a Break website I showed you and those images, they definitely feel much younger, okay? But this is not where the ration book is. It's not up with your 80-year-olds. You know, it's all about the look of it as well. People recognize these signals, and it's, you know, it's worth keeping alert to them. Okay, if we then come to the other end of the spectrum, and we're looking at children, lots of ways, I think, to get children involved. All kinds of games work really well. We're not teaching kids how to read. And I think too much of children's libraries is about organising and managing the children and encouraging them to learn. You learn if you want to. And I think we have to get the pleasure and the excitement over first. You've got some great ways of doing that. I have been in the space yesterday, your jungle space and things like that. Fantastic in the library here. Really, really good. But I think we could make choosing more easy for children. Okay? And I'll take you through a few things. This is one we made as a little matching game. Why don't we have a game which has book covers on it? So I don't know whether you have these matching games for under fives. We have one in England, famous one called Washing Line, and there's another one with a shopping basket. And you lift the things out, you put them in to slot them into the hole. You can see how it does here. Children recognise book covers long before they can read. Yeah, any parent knows that. The child can choose the book from a very young age. Okay? And all those of you who've got kids who read them bedtime stories, you know that, and that's fantastic. But we now have in England, and I'm sure same Sweden, a lot of families who don't do that, and they don't have the books at home to do it. I read a statistic the other day that there are more homes in England now with two cars than with 2 books. Yeah, that's a shocker. And one of the things the library is crucial for is getting across that baby involvement in books, that little toddler involvement in books, long before the child can read. So visual things really work well, I think. Here you can see the child is actually doing it. She's matching them up and putting them in. You can do it as a jigsaw, you can do it as a game. I wish there were more products that used books like this. But when there weren't, we just made some. This is a nice picture book tunnel that you can crawl through. So you're bringing the crawling and the books together, and you make a little space you can get inside. You have to have things at the right height, and you need to be able to see them. So yours were at the right height yesterday, and you could see the top third of the book. It would be nice if you could see a bit more. The picture books have the most fantastic covers. And I go into lots and lots of libraries where they're all spine on, and you can't see a single one. And what do you see? Green dots. Yes, that's what I see. Choose green dot. Or, and I will do this one because I mentioned it yesterday, you still organise your picture books in alphabetical order. That was given up in England probably 20 years ago. And nobody died. What child chooses their book? I mean, maybe you're all child geniuses in Sweden, but I don't know any 3-year-old that chooses its book by the first letter of the author's name. They don't do it. So who's that for? You, principally. You're more important than they are. And secondly, some parents who want to choose particular books. But I would say you can abandon all of that. What a waste of time. You know, how do you free time to do something? Stop putting those books in alphabetical order. Just pack it in tomorrow. You could have them random, okay? Now, when I suggested this in Norway, one librarian said, yes, but there are books we get asked for, and if it's all random, how will we find it? So I said, okay, write down for 3 weeks which ones you're asked for. Let's know which ones they are, because you probably can guess. And usually they're older authors, and it's quite often parents wanting their kids to read what they read when they were a child, which is lovely if you can persuade your kids to love the same books as you did. I never managed that. Oh no, that's one of mum's. I'll have something quite different, thank you very much. So fair enough if you can do it, but how many is it? Of all the picture books you've got, okay, it's, in fact, do I have a picture? Oh, I've got one later on which shows a typical Norwegian library with them all in alphabetical order. And I've just started on it now, so I'll finish. I got them to write down for 3 weeks the books that were asked for. And I think there were 15 authors, okay, out of all of them. So I said, okay, we make these boxes for those 15. No bother, everybody knows that. These 15, when it comes back, you put them there. So they're very easy to find. Because I don't want you wasting your time looking for books all the way through. But I also don't want you wasting your time putting things into order, which is just because you like them in order, and it appeals to something anal in the librarian soul that really we need to get rid of and cut out and allow a little bit more creativity. Okay? Because the books are fabulous and you just need to let them speak. This is another children's library. This is a beautiful, all of these you can get in Sweden through Eurobib. We call this one a reading hideaway. It's just fantastic. So furniture is differentiated by age too. They're fun, they can just get inside it. That one I showed, we use that for about 6 to 10s. Young adults one, this is another one that we used for trying to get the right phrases for young people, freestyle. It's about being who you want to be. We always try and get a book into the picture as well. Nice one for that age. Oh, this is our new one. This I've been working on for a bit. This is a concept we came up with, and then we looked at book covers that would work with it. And this is actually a book cover by Stefan Sagmeister, who's given us permission to use it. And I think that's the most fantastic teen promotion. Who do you want to be today? And it's about how that reading experience can transform you into, you know, a monster, a superhero. I love that one. That's our newest one out. And I think Eurobib should take that, and we should have something in Swedish, because I actually think, as an image, it would work in Sweden fantastically well. You can correct me on that if you don't agree, but I think it's just a good one. We've also kept it deliberately a little bit androgynous. Could be a boy, could be a girl. You're not quite sure. But it's celebrating, where might a book take you? Just think of the books you could put with that. And again, be creative. Lots of fiction, obviously, all the vampire stuff, but you could also put biographies. Okay? Who do you want to find out about? Who do you want to live the life of? You can put biographies in that too. That's the kind of quick choice header that we do. And this is, again, impulse, fast, speed, thinking about the different sizes of time. Okay, those are all things you do inside the library, or maybe on the mobile library service. I want to talk a little bit about when we go outside the library. Going outside the library will always be more effort, and will always be more time, not just time consuming, resource consuming as well. So you have to know why you're going, and you have to think about where you're going and what for. We're often under pressure to go and do things outside the library. Don't just, you know, go and stand in the supermarket, because people will ignore you. You have to think about it. So I would say look for situations where people will pick up a book. Am I still recording? I suddenly went quiet. Good, thank you. And we talked earlier this morning about how to make small, manageable choices. It's only going to be a little offer, but it needs to be with a range in it, a range and manageable. So I'm going to show you some particular examples now. And again, these came, I'm saying the same story, but it's so true. This came directly out of librarian experience. I'm running a training session with a group of librarians, the ones who are going to be agents of change. And one of the women starts talking. I'm asking, where do you think people could pick up a book? Where in your life have you sat, bored to death with nothing to do? And, you know, it would have been so nice if there'd been a book there, okay? And she said, well, actually, I've been having cancer treatment. And she went to the cancer centre, and she was sometimes there all day. It was, not all our hospitals are beautiful, but this one was actually a new one, and it was very nice. They'd spent on the building, they'd spent on the artwork on the walls. But people were there sometimes for a whole day. Okay. Some of you may have similar experiences. It was a very nice environment, this one. But she said she'd sat there, her and this other young boy, okay, who was aged about 19, she thought. And she said the only reading matter was out-of-date women's magazines and the Reader's Digest of about, 2 years ago. And it's just gone bust anyway, the Reader's Digest. But you know the sort of magazines you get in those places. It's sad. So we said, is there not something we can do here? That's the hospital, the Cancer Treatment Centre. We came up, this is just the image we used for the promotion. We called it Just Imagine. And again, it's in 2 languages because everything in Wales is. And this is what it looked like. At 3 places in the cancer centre, it's this small, we had a little stand with 6 books on it. Behind that, there's another 6. We always try and have it 2 deep so that if you lift one off, there's another one behind. Choosing the books was really interesting. If you're having cancer treatment, what sort of thing do you want to read? And again, it's very different, okay? Some people want escapism. Anything that'll just get me, through. Some people, their level of concentration, if they're really sick, is very low, and they can only cope with very small things. Other people, actually, it's the moment. They want War and Peace. I'm going to read it before I die. I have had people say that. Some people want the life, death, and universe novel. I'm going to understand the world. I'm up against these big, big things, and I want to understand them. So some people actually go for famous classics in that situation. It's an interesting thing. Whereas others will go for, a blockbuster or something short. Very, very varied. So choosing the books was an interesting task. How do you get that range together? No, I don't have another one. Okay. The biggest problem was persuading the county authorities running this project to collaborate to buy the books. That was the single hardest thing. But we then had the books not in the library, okay? So if you opened the book, and you can see there's a little leaflet and a bookmark that goes with it there, it said you can read it here, you can take it away and bring it back here, or you can take it away and return it to any library across North Wales, which was a great offer. This was for families, visitors, as well as residents, okay? And within a week of doing this, one of the books turned up on the Isle of Anglesey, which is the furthest point it could have been from this cancer treatment centre. That's libraries. It will always happen. And it had a message inside to the libraries where it turned up saying, this is part of the Just Imagine project, can you return it to headquarters? And we kept the books moving that way. So it's a tiny project. It had a huge impact. The staff in the cancer treatment centre loved it. The office staff borrowed books. And what they said was, it gave them something to talk to the patients about other than their illness. Instead of just how you're feeling today, you could say, oh, did you see the books? And, you know, what would you try? And did you try anything? And it gave them another whole conversation. Now, of course, people could have taken their own books, but there were people in there who hadn't thought of that or who didn't have any books at home. And just these few, rightly positioned, made a big difference. So think about that. Are there places in your communities where you could take books and get them used in that way? Doesn't need to be a lot, you know, but every so often it needs to change. I've got two Welsh ones. The Welsh were particularly good this year, the year we did all these. Again, it was part of a longer training programme where there are 22 county services across Wales, and they each nominated one librarian to work with us for 3 years. A bit like what I'm looking for in the European project. So we were looking for situations, again, where people are ready to engage. Why might they actually like something with words? There's lots of other things that we can do with our time now. So we can't assume that words come naturally to everybody. Where do people want words? And one of, I think, the areas where this happens a lot is, again, the big occasions in life. When you have a baby, when you have a christening, when you have a wedding, when you have a funeral. And what we're finding, I'm sure this is happening to you as well, is that more people are managing a part of that ceremony for themselves. They're choosing something that they read aloud as part of the wedding ceremony, as part of the funeral ceremony. They have something which it's not always the church person or the official. The individuals want to do it themselves. And finding the words is really hard. If you read those death notices in the paper, you know, they're terribly moving, but they're not very good poetry. You know, people are struggling, you know, the best dad in the world, you know, it's a cliche, but people feel it. You know, the emotion is huge if somebody close to you dies. You all know it. Any of you who haven't been there, you're lucky so far. It's a massive thing. And how do you find something which helps you to express that emotion? Well, the great poets have been doing it for years. And it is a huge route into poetry. People who are closed to poetry most of the time, suddenly, in that moment of intense emotion, you can catch them. So we created a display called All the Best, which is like the kind of message you get in a greetings card, best wishes. We have, I'm sure you've got the same, terrible little verses to try and cheer you up, you know, in cards with cliched things on the front. You know, you all know what I'm talking about, yes? And we give them because there's nothing else to give. Well, could we make something better than that? So we made a display of poetry books at the library. We ran staff training sessions to help people find poems, okay? You're going to have a ceremony. Have you thought about using a poem for it? Would you like one? And what kind of, you know, what kind of person was this? What would be all of that? And we chose 4 poems that we put on postcards in huge numbers to go outside the library. And they got used in all kinds of places. It was fantastic. The library staff were really, really inventive. One of them took a whole bundle of them to the registrar office. That's where you have to register the birth, marriage, death. Yes, I'm sure you've got the same system, something similar. And the registrar said, would you like to use a poem in your ceremony? And handed them. Another of them put a whole stack in the florist, the flower shop, next to where the registrar's was. You could do that next to the graveyard, you could do that. And you're offering something outside the library, quite different. This is what the back of every postcard said. All the best. Finding the words at your library. Library staff can help you find the right poem for any occasion. Call into your library for all kinds of books, DVDs, and access to the internet. So we made it a general promotion of the library as well, but the particular hook, the one to go in with, was about finding the words to express a big emotion. We also have in England now, and again you may have the same here, quite a different approach to some poetry anthologies. They have bought into reader-centeredness. So particularly we have 101 poems to get you through the day and night. And there's a whole lot of anthologies like that. They often start with 100 poems or 101 poems. Daisy Goodwin edited quite a few of them. And it's organised not by the poem, but by the occasion you need it for. So relationship breakup, bad hair day, and you get it. And the poems are brilliant, and they're quite often, there may be some quite famous ones in there, and it's a quite different way to get into poetry. This is what it looked like on the front. We did 4 different designs. This poem is a beautiful one, the Sheena Pugh. We got permission for all of these because we reproduced them, as a message of good wishes. It's a bit long to read you here, but it is just, if you got that on a card, you'd probably cry and you'd fall in love with whoever sent it you. It's that good. And it's that power with words that we're trying to harness, okay? And a Spike Milligan one. You can see the imagery is powerful as well. So that's the front of the card, and the back of the card said, all the best, finding the words at your library. It's a great claim to make. And without the training, we couldn't have made it. There are many, many libraries you could go to where they're just frightened to death of poetry and they wouldn't help you at all. The Welsh are a little bit more into poetry to start with, but I think it was also the training support. You didn't have to know everything, you just had to know how to use the resources that were available and where to go to get help. That was the 4th one, a very different masculine sort of image. Again, it's a nice project. Okay, I'm looking at the time. I will give you one more bit. This is a website aimed at sort of 8 to 12s, 14s. I'll show you the different things on it, give you an idea. This was a website that we did with, again, different libraries in Scotland. And we worked with school libraries and public libraries together. And each of them got a small little focus group together to help to work on it, of the target ages. So the choices here, the fact that we separated boys from girls wasn't our decision, it was the way the group went. And the older girls, they wanted to call theirs Girls with Attitude. They came up with the name. And we made a website. All I want you to look at is the way it kind of looks, as compared with this one, Eclair, which is what the younger ones wanted to call it. And you can see it's got a very much younger feel. Yeah, I'm just wanting to get the style. The language is different. It's looking at all the different things the library does, and what the kids are into. So we've got art, we've got ponies, we've got TV favourites, all the rest of it. And the website targets that age group, but it's promoting everything that the library does. So this site was used outside the library as well as in. It was particularly used in schools. We had a problem page. That's a classic one to do with kids. Get them to write as if they're writing to the problem page as a character in a book. It works well. And then you can reply. And this one, I wanted to show you this one. I didn't get on the internet, which I forgot about, but this is just how you get kids to choose and how you open up reading choices with kids, okay? This is a horoscope. Lots and lots of girls, they read the star signs. Yes, it's a load of rubbish, you know, but, well, maybe somebody believes. But, you know, it's fun. And it's a way of having a discussion about personality. So what happens here is you spin the wheel, it's active on the website, and you choose which is your birthday. And then when you get it, you have a bit Virgo, and you have a little message. A friend may need your help with a tough decision. And you get a recommended read, okay? And the site was set up so that the library staff could change these, so you could alter it, you know, every few weeks if you wanted to. A great way to get girls, particularly, who do read quite often, off a particular series to try something new. If you've ever tried to do that, it's really difficult. They love this, and they won't jump sideways to something else, and they've read it all, or you've none left. Works really, really well. So it's just a simple choosing mechanism. But to use the horoscope doesn't say anything about reading particularly, but they love it. And then when they get in, they feel, oh, I've got to get that book. Absolutely, because it's just for me. And it works every time. This is the boys' one, the lads. They chose that name. We said, okay, what should we have as all the introduction? You know, what do you say to each other? And they didn't want an introduction. The girls were writing all these bits, and I said to them, well, what do you say when you meet each other? Oh. So, a very different feel. Lots of stuff, manga, comic books. And of course, girls who like this kind of stuff can use this bit, and boys the other way. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. Instead of horoscopes, it became horrid scopes. So it's kind of jokey. Same technique, but it's not taking it seriously at all. And you get a book which suits you again. Just, there are things you can do on the web quite easily like this that work well. And the last one I want to show, this is another site that was aimed, this is more 19 to 25. But you could adapt it for different ages. And this is another concept we've used in lots of different ways, which is the idea of a blind date with a book. Yes? Do you have, does blind date translate? Somebody fixes you up to go on night out with a partner you've never met. And we also had a television programme for many years with Cilla Black called Blind Date on telly. Did you have that? Where you can pick from 3, and you don't quite know who they are. You get a description, you hear their voice, and then you choose, and when you choose one, you see the 2 that you've rejected. That's the model, okay? And then you go off with the one. Okay? So, we did this for books. And again, what matters is don't make it too crude. If it's too crude, people won't use it. It's got to be interesting and witty. So we divided up, okay, you can play safe with the kind of partner you always go for, or you can flirt with a date you've never tried before. It's just the same with books. Do you always choose safely, or do you flirt a little with something you've never had? You could end up being bored or embarrassed, but you might discover the love of your life. And you choose here between very different kinds of read. So, confident, a bit of a laugh, boozy, chilled, likes to keep you guessing, cerebral, ultimately dependable, hot, steamy, passionate, one-night stand, cultured, traditional, courteous. And the library staff had a lot of fun making these up, writing the text and choosing the books. And this person has chosen intellectual, surprising, on the edge, demanding. And then you get a description of the books, okay? So the first one, young go-getter, would like to meet, you know, it's all these contractions that you have on dating sites. Talented, like-minded homeboy to travel the urban underworld with, and perhaps even take it over. Or rich businessman who should know better, would like to meet young girls for domination, power games and control. Money no object, morals no way. And you have to choose between these 3. And what happens when you choose one? You see the 2 that you've rejected. So that's the young go-getter one there. And that's the one I didn't read you, which is actually a fabulous book. I've read that, the Sarah Hall. And it says at the bottom, it's still not too late. If you want to dump your first choice and go off with one of these instead, just click on the cover. But if you went through with the one that you still don't know what it is, this is what you got. Your date will be waiting for you 5 days from now, and will wait for you for 3 weeks. And you just chose the library that you wanted to pick it up at. And you could then go and get the book from the library. Now, I think a lot more people use the website for fun than actually went to get the book. But it was great to have the real connection there. And of course, everybody needed to know about it in all those libraries. But that was a really fun way to target that age group. Now, you could do blind date for 75-year-olds. It would just look very different. Okay? It's a concept that can be moved across ages quite a lot. But the style of it, you can see this is, the way we've done that. Okay, so I'm now going to get you to talk to each other again. And I want you to think about your own library situations. And I want you just to come up with at least one idea, maybe more than one. You can start from an audience. That's a group of people. What age group, what type of people, inside or outside the library. It doesn't need to be such a big project as what I've been looking at. I sometimes say, here's another one, I haven't told you this. Start from a problem. And one library service closed at 7 o'clock in the evening, okay? And they always had a problem. At 10 to 7, 10 minutes before closing, they had an influx of people. And the staff were really cross because they were trying to close everything down, shut the library, go home, yes? So these people who came for the last 10 minutes got the worst service of the whole day. If they'd come earlier, that would have been great. But at this, oh, for goodness, no, we're going to have to stay open another 10 minutes. I'm not paid for that. So there was a problem happening. So what we devised instead was, okay, just for this 15 minutes, we start 6:45. We will put a person and a computer, a laptop, to issue books right near the door. And we will put a couple of trolleys or some display there near the door. And we will aim all the people that come in at 10 to 7 to turn them around in this tiny area, take something and get them out again. And whoever's doing it is going to have a smile. No grumpiness, no bad temper. Oh, so lovely to see you. Oh, would you like me? You're just going to whiz them through as quickly as you can. And it worked. They couldn't do it all day, but they just did it for those 10 minutes. It's worth thinking about. So you may even think of something like that that's a problem in your library, okay? Another place to start is from a good phrase, good words. I've given you lots of English ones, and lots of those won't translate. If you start in Swedish, what are the current phrases that people are using? What's catchphrases off the television? What would people recognise, okay? And the third place, start from your own reading. We tend to make promotions for people out there different from us. And that's always a problem, okay? Because they end up patronising. They end up not... Start with yourself. Make something you would want to use. If you want to use it, everybody else will. So that's a good point as well. I want you to talk to the people next to you, again, 2s or 3s, and write down on a piece of paper, separate piece of paper, the place. Is it a particular library you're going to do this in? Is it a particular part of your website? Is it another space entirely out in the town? The people, who do you hope to reach? And the idea, what are you going to do? And try to make it start from the reading experience and the readers. You can adapt anything I've given you or start again fresh. Okay.